Imagine I'm your patient. I come into your clinic, your telepractice.
First thing I'm going to tell you is you can't afford me.
It's funny because when I was in college, I would do the 20 grams of creatine because I was a skinny high school kid trying to gain weight, and I actually gained like 20 pounds.
Of water.
Of water, exactly. So we just take B12 and folate and just call it a day? What do you think?
Measure them, man. Although they're commonly deficient, you
Yes.
don't need much of them. You want this to be of high bioavailability, which is a problem with curcumin.
Yes,
So it's very hard to absorb.
Yeah.
Is that you take breaks from your supplement.
Hello everybody, this is Dr. Scott Sherr. I am a board-certified internal medicine physician specializing in hyperbaric medicine, health optimization medicine, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Health Optimization Medicine and Practice, as well as Transcriptions.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ted Achacoso. I'm the founder of Transcriptions and of Health Optimization Medicine and Practice Association.
So, listening today, thank you for being here. Whatever we're going to be talking about, please don't take this as medical advice. Just be aware that as we discuss supplements with Dr. Peter Attia. All right.
Talk to me about what you consider to be the basic supplements most people should at least be considering. I'm aware that this is incredibly individualized, but most people want to perform better, have some good energy, do well in the gym, so on and so forth. What are the areas in which most people should be at least looking at supplementation, or are there any at all?
I mean, I think most people probably would benefit from magnesium. So you have to then decide on which ways to take it. I did a whole podcast on this because it is complicated, and you want to talk about the speed with which magnesium gets absorbed. Are you talking about organic, inorganic? Are you taking it more for performance and avoiding cramping? Are you taking it more for GI regularity? Are you taking it more for cognitive benefits? So all of those would be different forms. I actually take 3, maybe 4 different forms of magnesium. So I'm keeping track of both the total elemental magnesium I'm getting, but more importantly, the form I'm getting it in and how I'm kind of titrating each one to these benefits.
And what are you going for then?
All of the above, right? So it's GI function, it's muscle function. Which ones I'm taking? Yeah. So slow mag is my favorite for, as its name suggests, slowly absorbing magnesium. So, minimizing any PVCs and cramping, basically. For a person like me who's very active, sweats a lot, live in Austin. Then I take magnesium oxide, which is kind of more the GI version of that. And then I take magnesium L-threonate, which is the cognitive part of that. So that's the one that gives you better cognitive absorption. I'm trying to think if I take a 4th one. I probably have some magnesium and something else I'm taking, but those are the big 3.
Have you heard of magnesium before? A couple times?
I think it's involved in about 300 enzymatic reactions in the cell, right?
At least, yeah.
So it's important that before you supplement with magnesium, you actually need to measure your levels. And the measuring is actually not serum magnesium, right? You want intracellular magnesium. And when you see results, it will say RBC with a subscript of I, meaning it's intracellular magnesium, because it's actually the one that's contained inside your cell. The rest are just being transported. You cannot just take magnesium willy-nilly and not know also the kind of magnesium that you're taking, because the most common kind will actually give you diarrhea.
Yes, magnesium oxide typically.
Yes. And even magnesium bisglycinate, for example, is supposed not to, but it still does. And what I do is actually tell my patients to take it at night, because it actually causes vasodilation, right? Magnesium is something that you inject for preeclampsia, right? Or hypertension.
Female that's pregnant, that's having hypertension, you can give them magnesium.
They give a bolus of magnesium.
Yes.
So
you give it for seizures as well. You can give it for seizures and lots of things.
However, what's important, if you're going to use it for health optimization or for health, or you're thinking of supplementation, man, you have to measure these things, right?
Yeah.
You just can't take magnesium. Magnesium is available in food, and it's not also a common deficiency that you'll see. There are other more common deficiencies that there are, like D deficiency or B deficiencies and so on. However, it's good to point out that the different forms of magnesium that are there, and you take a combination for them. Is actually everything to do with bioavailability, right? How bioavailable are these forms of magnesium?
Yeah, creatine, monohydrate, at 5 grams daily. I don't think it matters when you take it, truthfully, but the most predictable and routine time for me to take it is during a workout. So just mixing it in with electrolytes and water and drinking it.
Put it in with something else that you're already drinking.
Exactly. Yeah. Otherwise, I'll forget to drink it.
I can't remember. I think it was Tim Ferriss who was talking about some benefits from much higher doses of creatine, 10 to 20 grams a day. Have you looked at any of this? Have you seen any of this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, look, when I was a kid, that's how you dosed it. You would load it. You would do 30 grams a day for a week, and then you'd go 30 grams a day for a week, and then down to 5 a day. Now, my last look at this literature said that was not necessary at all, and taking 5 a day, you'll very quickly get to your saturation levels, and you're totally fine.
Is there a size of human for whom, if you're 260 pounds, should that be a little bit more?
That's possible.
And if you're a 120-pound woman, 110-pound woman, maybe, would you keep it at 5?
I mean, I do, and the only time I sort of tell people to dial it down is if they get GI upset from it, which some people do.
It's funny because when I was in college, I would do the 20 grams of creatine because I was a skinny high school kid trying to gain weight, and I actually gained like 20 pounds
of water.
Of water, exactly, of water on creatine. And then, of course, as soon as I stopped the creatine, it all went away.
Yeah,
So.
I know bodybuilders are fond of creatine, and so many people are. For me, it's like if you eat enough red meat, that has phosphocreatine in it.
It does, yes.
And if you eat enough red meat, that's enough to satisfy your creatine, the creatine load that you need to have. Right?
Yeah.
That's why for my patients, I said if you can eat, rare steak or a medium rare steak, or at least once a week, your creatine load would be satisfied.
So if you overcook the meat, you lose the creatine, you think?
No, that's just the other benefits.
The other benefits, yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah,
the other benefits of not having
charred meat.
Yeah.
Heterocyclic monoamines, and then you get into the realm of toxicology. So,
Yes, yeah. I always thought with creatine, so I've read a lot about how it helps with methylation overall, so methylation recycling. So in the case of your B vitamins, for example, that need to be methylated to be activated, and then they give off their methyl groups to help with various types of enzymatic reactions. The way you can recycle them is by giving some creatine. Have you heard that before? Or?
That pathway, I consider as a minor pathway. It's a minor pathway.
It's minor,
It's like, and we tend to blow up these things because they make news, but it's actually a minor pathway in the recycling.
Yeah.
Right. The major pathway for recycling in methylation, right? And that's in the cycle, and nowhere in the cycle do you actually see creatine in there because it's just a minor part.
I think a lot of people probably could use a little bit of help with methylated B vitamins, maybe some TMG. Again,
what's TMG?
Trimethylglycerate, which is
glycine.
Basically, we would use these to titrate homocysteine levels. So if a person's homocysteine levels are elevated, you can basically get their homocysteine levels normalized with methyl B vitamins. Now, we don't really have, I'm trying to think, we have one study that speaks to the efficacy of that for brain health. But what we're doing is using a proxy, which is we know that homocysteine levels, when elevated, play a role in at least 2 diseases, right? Dementia and dementing diseases and cardiovascular disease. And so by asking the question, if you lower homocysteine levels, do you address that? You're asking the question indirectly, is homocysteine causally related to those diseases or not? And looking at the neurodegenerative side, it appears more likely that it is. And there's a very clear mechanism for how homocysteine could be causally related in cardiovascular disease vis-a-vis its impact on endothelial function and endothelial health. But I would say that that's kind of a soft recommendation.
I've got one copy of C677RT or whatever.
You know how many people I've met in my life who have the wild type for both MTHFR genes? And you have to keep in mind how many people I've looked at in the past 15 years. Yep. I've seen 2 people that have the wild type. So everybody has one of the SNPs on these genes. I actually think they should be the wild type, truthfully. I think we've got it backwards.
Should we just take B12 and folate and just call it a day? What do you think?
Measure them, man. Although they're commonly deficient, you don't need much of them. But we have something in health optimization medicine practice called, the levels by which you actually balance the patient or the client, which is the first you use the bioidenticals and bioactives, meaning the same thing as the body uses. Right. And certainly trimethylglycine and dimethylglycine are not, bioidentical.
Right.
The whole point about cysteine of cysteine, and then homocysteine that many people actually fail to grasp is that cysteine is a sulfur amino acid, right? So sulfuric amino acids, as I taught you, is what is usually involved in the detoxification pathways. Because if you take a look at that, cysteine, homocysteine, and then it actually goes into the GSSG pathway, right? The glutathione. Synthesis, and we know that that's the major molecule that does our detoxification inside the cell. In fact, in my anti-aging panels, I put homocysteine as one of my inflammatory markers.
Right.
And I use it actually to cross-check the HSCRP. Right. I look at it more from the inflammatory detox angle, right? Rather than looking at it. And it's because the cycles are all related. B12 is related to B9, is related to B6, you know, and then is related to the BH4 and then the urea cycle.
Right.
In fact, that's, I think, the only cycles that I required the students to memorize. Not even the Krebs cycle, right?
Yeah.
Because this is more useful in clinical practice.
Yeah, I think the key here, as we always talk about, is that I think we both agree that methylated B vitamins are likely the way to go for many people. We also know that it's best to test what you need. If you go to like a regular doc, they're going to test your B12, they're going to test your folate, and that's it. But you have multiple other B vitamins that also can be
so go
associated.
to a health optimization medicine practitioner, right? They will measure all of these levels, and they can correlate which levels are actually going where.
I take Curcumin.
What's that?
It's
like activated cumin?
Curcumin, yeah. It's basically a more liberated form of curcumin, so more bioavailable.
Liquid?
No, capsule. Yeah.
Okay. What dose?
Just more expensive. Good question. I don't remember the dose. It might be 300 milligrams, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's amazing. For how often I'm asked this question, you'd think I would know this better. There's other things I just don't recall.
Magnesium?
Yep.
Creatine? Methylated B vitamins, if appropriate, to bring homocysteine in line.
Yep.
You think he's sleep deprived? That's why I can't remember the dose. Well, I mean, I think that's a big piece of this here, right? Is that if we're going to be taking something, we need to know how much we're taking on a regular basis, and this is trying to be optimized to the levels that we need. But something like curcumin's a little bit different, right? Because it's not like it's not one of our bioidenticals.
Right? Curcumin, so the levels of balancing for us is bioidenticals and bioactives, right? And then the second level would be your phytoceuticals, nutraceuticals, phytoceuticals, and all of those, they are there. Curcumin is in that level, right? Probiotics are in that particular, the second level. The third level is drugs for those of you who are interested.
So we have the bioidenticals, phytoceuticals, and drugs, and then add health optimization. Sorry, other way around.
Top down, right? So that you think first was, what does the body use? Right?
Gotcha. I was thinking the pyramid, like this is the base, but okay, fine.
Well, what does the body use first? You know, it's an order of how the body uses it. And curcumin is actually wonderful because it activates what's called the NRF2 pathway. You know, in health optimization medicine, we are big at balancing the NF-kappa B, which is inflammatory pathway, and the NRF2 pathway, which is the anti-inflammatory pathway. And these are fundamental pathways, and these are actually heavily conserved genes. You know, I was reading a paper that the body actually contains all of these genes from several 100 million years during the first cell's development, and kept them, like vitamin D and so on, because they're actually essential to the functioning of the cell. When we have that, we see, well, okay, now that we know that the inflammation is the yin and anti-inflammation is the yang, you activate the yang pathway, by taking curcumin. However, my advice is like, well, aside from the fact that you want this to be of high bioavailability, which is a problem with curcumin, it's very hard to absorb, is that you take breaks from your supplements. Like for me, I do rotate my supplements. Or if you don't like taking breaks because some obsessive compulsive part of you thinks that you should take curcumin all the time, change brands. Right, so that your body experiences some other variation of the product.
And this applies to the phytoceutical aspects and not the bioidenticals, correct?
Yeah, just the phytoceutical aspects. It's just like the Okinawan Blue Zone. They eat 120 different kinds of foods in a week. They don't repeat foods every 4 days and so on and so forth. Well, why can't we do that with our supplements, right? Why should you take one phytoceutical like continuously? You can take it like for probably 3 months and then you stop. Right?
Yeah, a big thing with curcumin is also make sure you have it with a fatty meal, right? That's a big thing that people forget. Sometimes the capsules are formulated with fat in them. I'm not sure about the type he's talking about.
It used to be, in older technology, when the capsules were not yet these kinds of capsules that we have now, they would even break. right?
Yeah.
As you're swallowing them, it would break, much like alpha lipoic acid. It's like, and it tastes terrible. But there are many ways of quieting your NF2 pathway. When you're off curcumin, sleep will quiet your
NF2.
NF2.
NF-kappa B pathway, I think, right? I mean,
To quiet your NF-kappa B pathway and upregulate your NRF2 pathway.
Yeah.
Sleep is one of them. Exercise or regular movement. It's not that we don't want. The centerpiece of what we look is actually balancing the anabolic and catabolic processes.
Right. Yeah.
Inflammation is definitely catabolic, right? Anti-inflammation is definitely anabolic, right? And anti-inflammation is catabolic.
Yeah. I thought it might be helpful to explain the NRF2 pathway briefly. That what we're talking about here is increasing your antioxidants, and the main one here is going to be glutathione.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different ways that this pathway can be upregulated. Certainly, curcumin is one of them. One that I talk about a lot actually is higher doses of methylene blue increase hydrogen peroxide production in the body, which then stimulates glutathione production. So there's a lot of different ways this can happen.
Yeah, which then brings us to the core of what I want students to hear in health optimization medicine. Again, this is about energy management, right? So you are going to be using these things to build or to destroy, and you will need to have energy to do them.
Right.
So the body actually, will do preferentially your body's defense and everything else, but where is that energy going to come from? And therefore, you have to, it's your duty as a clinician to say, well, okay, the energy is going to be diverted here, right? So how can I help, it to remain where it's supposed to be, which is, for your defense.
Right. And we've talked about this in so many different ways with marathon runners, for example. You and I were just having a conversation about they're using so much muscle energy that their gut doesn't get enough energy, and they start pooping all over themselves and they feel terrible. So it's all about energy management. But what I wanted to ask you, Ted, we've talked about this before, but I think it'd be a good time to ask you your definition of health. Your A plus B plus C.
Health is very simple. It's A plus B plus C. And you could take a look at the definition of the World Health Organization of health, and it's so fucking non-clinical. So what I do with this fucking definition, right? Give us a more clinically oriented definition. It's health is A plus B plus C. A is the absence of disease, which is illness medicine is good for, and it's really just really good for acute infections and trauma. And for the rest of the other chronic diseases, it has a dismal track record, right?
Yes.
And then B is the balance between anabolic processes or processes that build and catabolic processes, breakdown, according to the C, cycle of life of the organism. The easy way to remember this is that in pediatrics, they're tilted towards anabolic, right? When you are older, it now tilts towards the catabolic. And in health optimization medicine for adults, we would like to keep that balance for as long as we can.
So the idea would be to optimize to your cycle of life at the moment, right? Depending on what that might be. So,
in Aubrey de Grey, for example, what he proposes for anti-aging really is the repair of your metabolic damage, right? And this is where, the stem cells and all that stuff. But we go one step ahead, which is like, no, we take care of your metabolites first. Before they get into metabolic damage, just let's take care of the basic cell first, because they're the ones producing all of these metabolites.
And I think it's also important that it's never too late to do these things, right? Because even when you and I are working with cancer patients, people that are very sick, if they don't have a foundational base, that bottom of the pyramid in my thoughts is that nothing else is going to get better, or like your immune system is already bad and you're going through cancer treatment, like you have to have an optimized immune system to be able to do these things.
In fact, that's what I do before, this guy is the expert, actually. I tease him as the world's expert, which is true, in hyperbaric medicine. Before I send patients for hyperbaric therapy, I actually health optimize them first to balance their metabolites, right?
This is what I learned from you, right? Because I didn't realize why people were getting so ill sometimes when they go through hyperbaric therapy, is you're creating a huge amount of oxidative load. There's lots of reaction to oxygen species, and that their bodies just couldn't tolerate it because their immune system wasn't optimized, their antioxidant levels were poor, et cetera. So, Dr. Ted, imagine I'm your patient. I come into your clinic, your telepractice.
First thing I'm going to tell is you can't afford me.
True. Okay, I have 4 kids. I can't afford anything. Okay, but I'm taking 20 supplements. I heard about all these cool podcasters, influencers, my neighbor, the neighbor's dog. I'm taking these 20. I haven't measured anything.
You should know that you could test those things now, right?
Yeah.
It's very easy to say, oh, I'll just take them because they won't affect me. They're just vitamins or food. No. They have a great impact on the body, and their balance is actually crucial to your body's optimal functioning. So what you would like to do is to measure all of those, because there are now tests called metabolomic tests, not genomic tests, but metabolomic tests that you actually test them.
Yes.
And that's what we do in health optimization medicine in practice, is test your metabolome.
Yeah, the key is that you want to test what you're taking and then use that testing to modulate the kinds of things that you are taking, the doses that you're taking, and the times that you're taking, and watch that information, those tests over time, and see how they change. Because that's how you truly know you're optimizing your cellular function, not just taking another thing that you heard on some stack. I mean, again, sometimes that stuff can be helpful in the short term, but in the long term, you want to have a sustainable foundation. I'm a good salesman for health optimization medicine now, too.
Well, what's interesting in what you said too is that, why do we want to balance this? As we want to keep in optimal health, but really what we want to do is to quell the cell danger response, right? Which is the 8 ways by which the cell responds to any stress, right? It's driven by metabolites, and when you balance those metabolites, then you're able to break out of the cell danger response, which, if it becomes chronic, can lead to chronic diseases.